Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, if you do enjoy the video that you came here to watch, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that little red subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. It really does help my audience grow. It really does help this channel grow. It means more than you realize. So go ahead, hit that little red button. Also, remember, full episodes of the Aaron Torres Podcast, wherever you download your podcast, Apple, Spotify, etc. Now, here is the video that you came here for.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. I do want to switch gears and do kind of want to do an update on what has quickly become one of our favorite topics here on the Aaron Torres Pod and the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. I'm, of course, talking about college football's favorite soap opera. We like to call it As Auburn Football Turns. Well, when we last left you on Tuesday, I went away for a few days, haven't really recorded much on Auburn, but when we last left you on Tuesday, we had a report out that the Auburn football coaching thing was done, right? That the decision was made that Lane Kiffin was set to coach the Egg Bowl on Thanksgiving, and by Friday morning would resign to take the Auburn head coaching job. Now, I'll be honest, I punched holes in that right away. I said, even if Lane Kiffin is the guy and he wants the job, Auburn isn't going to upstage Cadillac Williams prior to the Iron Bowl. So even before all that happened, I said, this one doesn't pass the smell test to me. Well, fast forward here a few days. It is now Saturday night that I'm recording shortly after the Iron Bowl. And it appears as though we do, in fact, have a new candidate, a new favorite, and a new update at Auburn. Out is Lane Kiffin. In appears to be the guy that I thought from the beginning was the most realistic candidate, as Hugh Freeze has emerged as the favorite to take the head coaching job at Auburn. And so let's just get into it. A couple quick thoughts. One, the Lane Kiffin stuff. Listen, I get a lot of stuff wrong. I'm far from right all the time, but I will say I have been consistent on this. I've never once believed that Lane Kiffin would be your next Auburn head football coach. I've said I understand the logic. The NIL structure is better at Auburn. The history is better. You can win at a higher level more consistently than Auburn. But I also said Lane Kiffin's happy there. I don't think the step up is that big. And I think he's ultimately using Auburn to leverage more out of Ole Miss. Well, we find out on Saturday that is absolutely the case. As Lane Kiffin, it is reported by Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated, gets an 8-year contract worth $9 million per year. Now, many of you are probably sitting there saying, well, wait a second now, Torres, you told me that per state law in Mississippi, state employees cannot have more than 4-year contracts. Well, according to Ross Dellinger, apparently this is being done through the university foundation as opposed to the university itself. I don't really get all the details. All we know, Lane Kiffin is basically set for the rest of his life money-wise if he was not before. And so I bring it up to say Lane Kiffin is going to stay. And with the news that Lane Kiffin is off the table, I'll be blunt. Hugh Freeze is not only the favorite according to multiple reports, but I think he is the best candidate. And I have said since even before Brian Harsin that I believe he's the best candidate. And when it becomes official, and I do believe it will become official probably in the next 48 to 72 hours, I think Auburn will have gone and gotten the right head coach. Now, what it comes down to me with Hugh Freeze is a couple things. One, there is in fact the resume, and this is something that I have said since the day that Brian Harsin was let go. There is only one candidate, if you cannot get Lane Kiffin, that you can get that can win at the highest levels of SEC football. Now, Hugh Freeze never won an SEC title, never played an SEC title game, but in the modern era, him and Lane Kiffin have basically won about as much as anybody in Ole Miss football history. More importantly, look at who he beat during that time. Beat Nick Saban twice, beat Kirby Smart in his final year, won 9 games one year, 10 games another year, goes to back-to-back Sugar Bowls. At Ole Miss, that is as good as it has been basically in my life, and this guy did it. Beyond that, what I would also say, he's only 53 years old, right? So sometimes you get a guy, he's a little bit older. Is he really going to have that hunger? Is he going to have a chip on his shoulder just because he had success before? Is he going to have success again? Hugh Freeze is only 53 years old. Matter of fact, I went back and looked it up. Nick Saban, when he took the Alabama head coaching job, was like almost 58 years old. So if Nick Saban takes the Alabama job at 57, 58, whatever it was, 56, somewhere in that time frame, and he's going strong 17, 18 years later, if Hugh Freeze gets this rolling, he is going to have, he is going to be the answer at Auburn for a very long time. And I do believe he will be the answer. And I do believe he is the right fit. Beyond having the success in the SEC, beyond the fact that he is pretty young, relatively speaking, listen, the bottom line is a couple things here. One, he knows this is his last chance, right? And so to me, I think that plays a factor. He wants this job. That's one thing that stands out to me as well. All we've heard about is how awful Auburn is, how terrible it is, how nobody wants to coach there. Your two biggest rivals are Georgia and Alabama, maybe the top two programs in college football at this point. Well, I think Hugh Freeze is going to embrace that challenge, and I would argue he's going to be in better position to succeed at Auburn than he ever was at Ole Miss. Remember, we now live in a world of NIL. Well, we have heard from multiple reports, multiple people, that Auburn is better positioned than just about anybody in this NIL space. Now, I don't know if they're as good as Texas or as good as A&M, but the report was that they had over $13 million in funds raised for NIL. I imagine that's towards the top of the SEC. In the transfer portal era, as Brian Kelly showed us at LSU, as Lincoln Riley showed us at USC, as multiple coaches have shown us, you can flip over a roster pretty quick. And the other thing that stands out to me with Freeze, it's not like he just did it at Ole Miss. This guy has won every single place that he has gone. He won at the high school level. He won at an NAIA school called Lambeth. He won at Arkansas State. He won at Ole Miss. He gets booted from Ole Miss. Guess what happens? Comes back, Liberty year 2 as they're transitioning to the FBS, has him at 10 wins during a COVID year. This year, 9 wins, playing most of the season with a third and sometimes fourth string quarterback. So a guy that has had success everywhere, a guy that has had instant results, a guy that has won in the SEC. If you're an Auburn fan, I don't know what else you could possibly be asking for in a head coach. Now, I know what some people will say. Well, he had problems with the NCAA. Well, a couple things. One, he was never found personally guilty of anything. I'm not here to say what he did or didn't do, what he knew or did not know. I'm just here to state the facts that the NCAA said he did nothing wrong. Two, that was in a pre-NIL year. Now, whether we want to call it pay for play or not, which is what Ole Miss was doing to some degree under his watch. I'm not saying he was involved. I'm saying it happened. Pay for play is allowed. It's allowed. We call it NIL. And like I said, few places are more set up than Auburn. As far as the personal stuff off the field, I'll be blunt. I've said it on this show a million times. His family's forgiven him. His wife's forgiven him. His children have forgiven him. Who am I to say? Nobody's perfect. None of these head coaches are perfect. And so I don't really care about the off the field stuff. I don't really care about NCAA problems in the past when now we live in a world where you can pay players above the table. And so to me, I think this is as good as Auburn has done, and I expect this thing to move quickly. Obviously, Auburn just played in the Iron Bowl. Liberty played earlier in the day and did lose to New Mexico State. I understand it's a bad loss. I understand it's weird. I understand his players seem not to be all that invested in that game. But at the end of the day, listen, Hugh Freeze said on this podcast, on the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, that there were a select few jobs that he'd be interested in. And as I've told you all along, the buyout in that Liberty contract would not keep him from taking that job. So at the end of the day, I don't know when it becomes official. I suspect that if Auburn officially offers the job, and I think they will, he is going to take it. How much money is it for? How many years? I don't know, but I do believe he is the right man for Auburn. And obviously, once it becomes official, we will continue this conversation.